p.m. If you want to come down, great, just listen a mile away. There's a map in your packet. Love to have you. And we can have All right, our last speaker. We always say the best for last. Good. Okay, our last speaker. This is Roy Dunshee. Roy has been here 2 years with us, and I can remember getting a call from him when the position became open here, and we talked on the phone for a couple minutes. I think he was trying to get an idea of what the people were like that he would possibly be working with or could be working with. And I was really impressed by how thoughtful. I didn't know Roy at all. I was impressed by the thoughtful questions and the responses. We were just kind of chit-chatting, and I got thinking, boy, this coach really knows coaching. And it wasn't until Roy was here for probably a month or so that I really got an idea of the depth of his knowledge of coaching. Roy he's our soccer coach here, our men's varsity soccer coach, but he does a lot with coaching education for, is it USA Soccer or US Soccer? United States Soccer Federation and the National Soccer Coaches Association of America. Right. And you were just teaching at their convention a week ago. Mm-hmm. I think Roy's wicked smart. I can say that because I'm from Boston. You ready? Yes. All yours, Commander. Thank you, Michael. What is the soccer coach going to tell this group of rowing coaches? Well, I promise it's not going to be about soccer. Sorry. Usually when I start talking about soccer, everyone's eyes glaze over, except my real close soccer friends. So, but I am going to talk about coaching. And I am a bit of a quote collector, so I'm going to start with a quote. And this is from a woman named Carolyn Henderson, who was a prairie farmer's wife in the Depression-era Dust Bowl. Because there's no better way to introduce a topic of positive coaching than a discussion about the Depression-era Dust Bowl. But anyway, Carolyn Henderson wrote this: "To prepare the ground as best we may, to sow our seeds, to cultivate and care for, this is our part. Yet how difficult it is for many to realize that the results are often left to the great silent, unseen forces of nature, whether the crop be corn or character." Well, I would like to thank Carolyn Henderson for mapping out my coaching philosophy, because we would all love to think that we control the result. We're the masters of our domain, we're coaches, we're sages, so we can control the result. But of course we cannot, especially if we begin with the result in mind that's winning. If we could really control that, then we'd never lose any contests, would we? But what we can control is our process. So we begin with the end in mind, we begin with a particular result we want, and that result might be as simple and as elegant as excellence. Well, how do we get there? Well, that's our process, and this is where we live as coaches. This is your art of coaching. It's your day-to-day, is your process. But your process is only as effective as the character of the people operating in your process. So that's you, it's your assistant coaches, and that's your rowers. So how do we coach all that? How do we get the character of our group level with our expectations for our process? It's not easy, but I would highly recommend that we take a very positive approach. So I'll share a little story. I've gone to a lot of these coaching courses through the United States Soccer Federation. I've taken them all, and I teach them now. But at one such course many years ago, I was playing in as a demonstration group, and I think I was in my late 30s, so my playing career was long over. My coaching career was just starting. And I was in there playing, and there's about 150 coaches watching, and I did something that I thought was pretty good. And moments after I did it, I heard from the sideline, "Stop, freeze, stand still." And the coach who was running that session was a master coach, a British guy named Jeff Tipping, who's absolutely brilliant. But I was a little down because he had just stopped it. And he's doing a coaching intervention, and he's going to correct me in front of all these coaches. So I think my body language looked something like this. So Coach Tipping comes out, and to my surprise, he did not correct what I did. He made a positive coaching point. He went over the details of my body shape and the touch I took and the technique and how I laid it off and spun out this way to take the defender and open up space and all this. And I think my body language ended up like this. I was the boss of the whole school. Now my playing career is long gone, But I hadn't been coached by anybody in a long time, and I think I forgot the power of that positive message. Now, was that an important moment in my playing career? No, that was done. But it was incredibly important in my coaching career because I began to remember the immense power of positive coaching. So how do we take that message and apply it to our rowers? Well, I recommend breaking the game down into components. I think it's an easy way to get our head around the game. And one of the things we do in soccer, and I think this would translate to just about any sport, we break the game into 4 components. There are soccer associations all over the world, and they agree on virtually nothing. But they agree on this, that the 4 components of the game are technical, tactical, physical, and mental. So you can think for your sport, the technique you must teach, and I recommend taking a positive approach to teaching it, that's a whole other 18 minutes. The tactics, strategies, decisions that you make. The physical element of your sport, which you guys know what you're doing there. I've seen those ergs, no thank you. But the 4th component is the trickiest one to teach, and that is mental or psychological or psychosocial, I think is a good word for it. And it might be the most important one, because long after your athletes are out of the boat, the lessons they learn from you about character and about life are going to stay with them. So how do we tackle that? How do we teach the character? Well, again, I like to break it down. So I think it's very useful to think of character in 2 distinct categories. There's performance character and there's moral character. So we often hear, like, he's a real good character kid. What does that mean? You want to coach character? You want to teach it to your players? Help them get their heads around it? You have to break it down like this. So what's performance character? Those are the skills that we use to govern ourselves. And you might think of adjectives like hardworking, industrious, diligent, confident. These are very personal skills. Moral character is how these are the skills we use to govern ourselves with respect to others. So when you think of someone who's a good teammate, who's kind, who's caring, who's considerate, maybe they're funny, maybe they're a really good locker room person. So we can show now our players these 2 skill sets, and we can teach that. We've all had the player who's the great locker room player, and I say player, you can think rower, the great locker room person who everyone loves, but maybe she's not particularly motivated herself. We also might have the real performance character who's the first one up in the morning, the first one at the boathouse, and the last one to leave, but is sort of an internal warrior. And she doesn't get along with everyone else on the team, so she lacks those sort of moral character skills. Well, here's some tips on how to train these things. If you have what I would call, or I would borrow this from my friend Tim Lenahan, who's the head coach at Northwestern, he would call the good moral character, who's a bad performance character, an external slacker. So great in a group, everyone loves having her around, but she's not motivated on her own. How do we motivate her? Well, I would recommend, consistent with the work of Carol Dweck, who's a psychologist at Stanford, who's done a lot of research on this and written a great book called Mindset, about growth mindset. Taking the approach where we catch them doing something right in effort and not in talent. So to say you've got a great talent and it's going to waste because you're not working hard enough, that's not going to get it done. But if we catch them doing something right where effort is concerned and reinforce that, we'll get somewhere. Among the many exercises and studies that Professor Dweck did was one that really caught my attention. 2 groups of school kids. One group, same IQ, and they're given the same test. After the test, one group is told, you're a really talented bunch. You did really well on this. Would you like a more difficult test? The other group was told, you're a really hard-working bunch. And by really stretching yourselves, you just improved your brains. You exercised your brains and you got smarter. Would you like a more difficult test? And by and large, the so-called talent group did not want a more difficult test because they risk their identity if they fail. They're no longer talented. And by and large, the effort group jumped at the chance at a new challenge because that's how they define themselves, by effort. So if you have an external slacker, maybe you can motivate her by catching her doing something right in the effort department. Demand it of her, but then reward it. So this positive reinforcement is our currency. It's currency we carry around in our pockets as coaches. The other one is playing time, or what boat you get in. That's currency too. But the positive reinforcement currency is just like a stack of dollar bills in your pocket. If you throw it around willy-nilly, waste it, it becomes inflated and loses its value. But if you invest it wisely by catching them doing something right, pointing out why it's right, learning a lesson from that, those wise investments will really pay off. So how do we deal then with the performance character who's not a good moral character? Now, we all want that athlete in our group, the one who's highly motivated, intrinsically motivated. But if they don't get along with the group, how do we motivate them? Well, we have a device we call the performance matrix. So for your performance characters, this may really appeal to them. And the performance matrix is very simple. It'll sound confusing at first, so I'll say it twice. Here it is. Actual performance equals potential performance minus faulty group process. Okay, we'll start again. Actual performance, what you do in a contest, is a product of potential performance, how good you could have been or we could have been, minus faulty group process. That is all the things we did wrong. How good are we? We're as good as we could have been minus all the stuff we do wrong. So then we define faulty group process, and we collectively agree to hold each other accountable and eliminate it. Late for practice, faulty group process. That 30 seconds just cost us 30 seconds on the field. It's a very small thing, but pennies make dollars. You're supposed to pump the balls up and you didn't. We have to wait for that now. Faulty group process. And everybody buys in. So if you can get that performance character in a room and explain to him that his faulty group process with respect to the way he treats his teammates is hurting the team. It's faulty group process. And we appeal to his performance desire, we may open up some ideas in his head about how he can be a better teammate. We have a thing I stole from an old Italian coach, and it's a little tricky, but it goes, he who plays for himself plays for the other team. He who plays for the team plays for himself. So if I'm self-absorbed and I'm playing for my own glory, I'm going to hurt my team. I may as well play for the other team. But if I'm about my teammates and making everyone better and involving everyone and elevating the unit, then the team's going to do better and I get the glory. So if we can appeal to that functional, performance-based character and show him that by being a better teammate, he's going to get the glory, then maybe we can elevate him too. But the best way to coach character, the very best way, the singular way to coach character is to model it. We have to live it. So no excuses. We don't accept excuses from our players. We can't make excuses ourselves. Your budget got cut? Too bad. Win anyway. Your boat's dinged up, you don't have good equipment? Find a way. So here's something you should never say. There's not a lot of absolutes for me in coaching, but this is one of them. You should never say, guys, I know it's really cold out there today, but maybe we can get out there and get some work done anyway. Well, you've just given them an excuse to tank. If it's too cold to practice, don't practice. But if you're going to go out there, no excuses. Every obstacle is an opportunity. So the opportunity to train in really cold weather is going to make you better if you're in a cold race. The opportunity to train in extreme heat is going to make you better in a race that's got extreme heat. I mean, it's Henry V. It's, if we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country proud, but if to win, the fewer the men, the greater the share of glory. Right? That's England fighting France when they're greatly outnumbered, and according to Shakespeare, they won that one. So can we find opportunity in setbacks and not make excuses? I'm nearing my end, and I don't want to leave this one thing out. I think coaching in the U.S. begins and ends with one guy, and that's John Wooden, and if you don't know who John Wooden is, you need to do some research. But John Wooden started as a teacher, and he lived his whole life as a teacher. When he was winning national championships at UCLA, he still always regarded himself as a teacher. And when he was in his 90s, I saw him read this verse, which just went straight to my heart, and I must have stayed with him because he read it at first when he was a very young teacher. And here's the verse. No spoken word, no written plea can tell our youth who they should be, nor all the books on all the shelves. It's who the teachers are themselves. So you want character out of your group, you have to live it. So now I'm going to ask you to engage in a small exercise. If you have a piece of paper, great. If not, you can probably do it in your head. If you have a piece of paper in front of you, put a line down the middle and create 2 columns. In the left column, I would like you to write down the initials of an adult from your youth. This is a coach, a teacher, a religious leader, a community leader, a civic leader, someone who had some influence over you when you were in a very tender age. And this influence was positive. This is someone who built up your confidence, who cared about you, who had a great influence on you. It's someone who maybe you've stayed in touch with them, or if you haven't, you'd like to reach out to them and say, thank you. You had an immense impact on my life. Thank you for that. And you can think of certain adjectives that would describe that person. Now, in the other column, I want you to think of the other type of adult from your childhood. This is a coach, a teacher, a civic leader, a religious leader who was egotistical. Maybe they were a bully, they were about themselves, maybe they were sarcastic or demeaning. They did not support you. We all have probably some adults from our youth who fit this profile. Some of us have some extreme examples of that. I have, from my life, a couple people I wouldn't cross the room and say hello to. I have other coaches that I would run through a brick wall for. So, 20 years from now at the 25th Rowing Talks, if I'm invited back and Mike Davenport wheels me up here, I don't know who's going to wheel Mike. And I'm up here and I do this same exercise. Sitting in these chairs may be rowers you're currently coaching. And if I ask them this same question, where will your name appear? Because if it's in the left column, that's a life's work. That is a life well lived. But if it's in the right column, you're in the wrong business, and you're going to do more harm than good. And if it doesn't appear at all, well, that's an opportunity lost, because we can have such a profound impact on the people we're working with. Last bit. I had a coach when I was right out of college. He coached the men's team, and we loved this guy. His name was Bill. He fought in World War II. The game of soccer had long since passed him by. He could offer us absolutely no tactical advice whatsoever. Didn't matter. Because when you ask Bill how you're doing, you get this response. How am I doing? Are you kidding me? I woke up feeling great, and that's the worst I felt all day. You always got that answer from him, and you knew it was coming, you didn't mind. Because you just wanted to play for this guy. And when I attended his funeral service at Arlington National Cemetery, the scores of former coaches, of players in attendance were testament to the power of that positive coaching. So here's the last bit. I want to end with a discussion of death, because nothing's more fun than that, right? There's a lot of research to indicate that deathbed confessionals, that is, satisfactions and regrets on the deathbed, center on 2 elements. The human condition is boiled down to 2 things: relationships and legacy. So that's sort of immortality. So anytime you think you're running out of positive things to say to your group, remember that you've chosen a position, a job that positions you to have incredibly great, deep, meaningful relationships on a daily basis, and to leave a legacy with every single athlete you come in contact with. So if you're ever running out of positivity, think of that. And remember this: Caroline Henderson from the Dust Bowl found a way to be positive. Surely we can too. Okay, thank you very much.